Thanks for tuning in to the 3D Tutor.
Hey guys, and welcome to a brand new tutorial. This time we've got low poly character modeling. Now, the first step of character modeling is to set up a good reference box. So I'm going to be using this character turnaround. I found it online. I searched for character turnaround template, believe it or not. So that is what I searched for, and this is what I got. It's one of the first few images on your favorite search engine. So the first step I'm going to be going through it is creating a new file. So I'm going to go ahead and go to new file and set it to 1024 by 1024. So that's going to be that's my canvas for the reference images, and it's exactly square because I'm going to be using it as a texture on a square plane within 3ds Max. So next I'm just going to select, using the selection tool, the front view of the character, and I'm going to paste it straight in to this new file. I'm going to go back and copy the side view of the character, if I can get it right. There we go, and then paste it over the other character in the new file. So what I'm going to do now, and this is a very important step, we've got to make sure that the side view of the character and the front view line up as closely as possible, because if you have a sort of mismatch, it's not lining up, then in 3ds Max it's going to make modeling the character a nightmare. So I'm going to go ahead and just change the opacity. Now there's two ways we can do this. Like I just said, we can change the opacity and make sure it lines up this way, or we can simply, because the layer has a white background, we can go on to darken or multiply. I'm pretty sure that's going to work too, and that allows us to sort of see how that lines up. Now what you're looking for on this particular reference, or these particular reference images, is that the top of the head, the chin lines up, the kind of shoulder area lines up, the height of the hand also lines up, and then you've got the base of the feet, the knee area as well. So we've kind of got a really good, match actually from the offset. Don't really have to adjust this at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave it the way it is. I'm going to place that roughly in the middle. It doesn't really matter if it's in the middle or not. And I'm going to save these two files out as the character front and the character side. So the best way to do this is to simply hide the layer that you don't want to save. So I don't want to save this because they're both overlapped. I'm just going to hide that top layer, and I'm going to go on to File, Save As, and I've already created a folder for this called References, and I'm just going to go down and save it as a JPEG, because for me, it's going to be compressed, and as long as I turn this quality slider all the way up to 12, it's going to be, good quality. It shouldn't really lose any image detail. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now I'm going to save the side view. So I'm going to go to Save As and go down onto JPEG and character sides. I'm just going to overwrite that file, make sure that's set to 12. And now we're ready to jump into 3ds Max. So once we're in 3ds Max, we need to set up a box. So I'm going to go ahead and create a box. Now it doesn't really matter at this stage, the sort of scale of the box, but all I'm going to do is make sure that it's square. So during the modeling process, it's not that very important to worry too much about the scale of the character. Of course, if it's going to go into a game engine, then you can sort of scale the character accordingly later, or you can do it from the beginning. But that obviously is something that would be a variable dependent on the engine that you're using. So the number one thing that I always do before modeling as well is I set up the viewport. So with this particular viewport, I'm going to go into the plus in the top left corner of the perspective view, go down to configure viewports, and then simply turn edge faces on and selection brackets off. We can apply that to all views, but for some reason the selection brackets option does not apply to all views, so it's really annoying. So I'm just going to go ahead in here and just sort of customize each one individually. So configure the viewports, get rid of selection brackets, and turn on edge faces. And likewise, I'm going to do exactly the same just here. Okay, so the next step now is for the reference box, we're just going to flip it inside out. So I'm going to go into Edit Poly for this particular box just here. Click on the element, select the element, and hit flip. Now after that's been flipped, what that means is we've just essentially turned the poly so they're facing inside instead of facing outside, because if there's one thing we know about polys, it's that they only face one way. So then we're going to go into object properties. So we're just going to right click on the box and go into object properties, and then turn backface cull on. So now what we've got is an inverted box which is sitting on our grid. In fact, talking about the grid, I'm going to get rid of the grid. So in the viewports that I'm going to be using, so it's the perspective view, I'm going to be using the left view as well, and I'm going to be using the front view. I'm just going to press G in each one of those viewports, and that's going to turn on and off. You know, that allows you to toggle on and off the grid. So I'm just going to turn the grid off. Next, what I'm going to do is go into the material editor. So I'm going to press M to go into the material editor. Now by default yours may open up like mine, which is the slate material editor. So I'm going to go down onto modes and then compact material editor, and that's the one that's going to you know, be a bit more user friendly for us, and this is the one that you're probably used to anyway. So I'm going to go down onto the first material, go onto maps, go onto diffuse color, and then hit none, and then I'm going to browse for the file. So I'm going to double click bitmap. And this is obviously the default folder for 3ds Max images, I guess, and I'm just going to go ahead and browse for my references. So here we have it, we've got the front view there, and I'm just going to go to parent. So go to parent is just here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on to go to parent, and then I'm going to go into the next material, and I'm going to be bringing in under maps, diffuse color, bitmap, the side view as well. Okay, so I've got both images in there now, and I'm going to be going to parent. Now that's obviously important because you want to make sure you're at the top level of the material, and you don't want to just start applying materials within the maps themselves, which is down here. So always click on go to parent until you're back to this top level of the material. So next I'm going to go and I want to cover something that's quite important here. If on your stack, which is this window just here, you have box and then edit poly above it, then what you need to do is right click on edit poly, and you should have an option which will say collapse to or collapse all. Now if you press any one of those and then hit yes on the next window, you should only see editable poly. Okay, so what you should be doing is when you create an object, you need to right click on the box in the stack. So this is within the modifier list. You right click on the box and then go on to convert to editable poly. Okay, so that's going to allow the next step to actually work. If you don't do that, then what I'm about to show you won't work correctly. So what's going to happen is I'm going to hit ignore back facing so I can select the polys that are facing me, so it ignores the ones facing away. I'm going to click on that one there. So in the front view, this is where I want the front of the character to be showing. So I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to go on to assign material to selection, and then show shaded material in viewport. And as you can see, as I've applied it, it is now visible in that viewport. Okay, and now I'm just going to go and repeat the same step in the left view. So I'm going to select the poly that is facing me. Now again, that wouldn't work unless you click ignore back facing, so make sure that is ticked first. If you don't have it ticked, you're going to end up with this, and that is actually selecting the polygon facing away from you. Alright, so you want to make sure ignore back facing is turned on, and then go into that material editor again, and we're going to apply the material in exactly the same way. Now by default, depending on which way your character is facing, he may come out in 3ds Max and be facing the wrong way. So as you can look at mine, both the characters are facing opposite directions. So we've got the front view facing this way, and then we've got the the character in this left view just here facing the opposite way. So we need to flip this texture. Now you can do it through Photoshop if you like. You can just essentially flip the image, and that would work. But you can also do it within 3ds Max. So we can go into the material itself, go down to maps, and you'll see in the diffuse color, if you click on the map just here, you have under angle the V parameter. So if you change the V parameter to 180, that's going to now flip that character across, so he's facing the same way as the front view. Okay, now that's obviously pretty much the overall process of setting up a reference image, a reference box. If you got a little bit confused and I was going a little quicker, then you're probably better off going into the specific video that I've already created on how to create a reference box, and then once again you'll find that link in the description below. So now I'm just going to save the file, because obviously I don't want to have to recreate this in case 3ds Max crashes or anything like that. So we're going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to go into my folder just here, and I'm just going to save it straight in there. Okay, so now that file's saved, I can now begin with the modeling process. Now this is the fun bit. This is where things get interesting, and also it can be quite confusing. So I'm going to go obviously as slow as I can, but hopefully, you know, you can obviously pause the video, go back a step if you find a few bits of it a little bit confusing. So I'm going to start with the box. Now I'm going to start with just under the pec area. Now I'm not 100% accurate, and I don't know about all of the muscle groups, so if I misname one, or if I call the wrong muscle the wrong one, please don't hate. I'd love for you to correct me, but yeah, that's just what it is. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a box just underneath the pec area. So I'm going to go roughly from around about here across to around about the middle of the character. Now the reason why I'm going to do only up to the middle of the character is because essentially what I want to do is just create half of the character from the front view, and then I can use symmetry just to, you know, replicate the other side. And in fact, we're going to be doing that as we're modeling, so we're going to go ahead a few steps and I'll be running you through how to add a symmetry and all that other fun stuff as well. Now I've created this box, but as you can see in all these viewports, we've got this annoying shadow which appears, and it really does get in the way when we're trying to line stuff up and, you know, have a look at how it's looking. That doesn't make sense. Have a look at how the model is progressing, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn every single viewport from realistic to shaded. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that for every single viewport where I have the reference image showing. So that's the front, the left, and the perspective view. So that's a lot cleaner. I'm also going to change the color of my object for your benefit, just so you can see the edges a little bit clearer. And now I'm going to simply go into the modify tab and add an editable poly onto this box. So in this left view, for whatever reason, when you create the box, it may be kind of pushed to the back or pushed to the front. So make sure you pull it back so it's kind of roughly in the middle or over the reference of the character. Okay, so let's start lining this box up. So again, we're going to be going into vertex and pressing Alt and X on the object to make it semi-transparent. So you can toggle that on by pressing Alt and X, and the reason why we do that is so we can see through it, and you know, that allows us to see the actual reference image as well, because without that you're kind of working blind and you can't really do an awful lot by modeling like this the entire time. So we're going to go ahead and just start moving the verts. Now in this front view, I want to make sure that you understand that you have to click and drag over the point, because what you've got here, you've actually got 2 points sitting on the same what appears to be the same point in the front view. You got the front one and you got the back one. So if I go in the perspective view, and if I just click and drag over this top corner, so it only appears to be selecting one vertex point, but if you look in here, we've actually got, if the bloody move tool, yeah, there we go, we've actually got 2 vertices selected. So we're going to click and drag and move up to around about the middle area of the pec, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this point into the area just underneath the kind of armpit, where the pec kind of meets the armpit area, or where the bicep kind of goes under, and then this point I'm just going to line up loosely to around about here. Now we're looking for flow lines. Now flow lines are the lines which kind of course flow over a character, but there has to be a slow transition. You can't have drastic angles like that there and that one there, and then the next one would be straight. You have to kind of have a really gentle kind of drastic, drastic, that doesn't make sense. You need to have a gentle flow to the edges and a transition between one angle to another. So in this left view now, I'm just going to line this up as well. So I'm just going to loosely kind of click and drag over this top right corner. Now this is where you have to be careful, because it looks like you've got 2 edges, and what I don't want is for you to be doing this and then selecting this one and then doing that, because right now we don't want to worry about little things like that. We're just going to really loosely kind of get the overall shape by clicking and dragging over those 2 points, and we're going to drag back. Now we can't see the character's back, so we have to kind of guess a little bit. So as the neck kind of flows backwards here, it's going to then start arcing back towards the lower back, down here, and then come out where the character's butt is basically. Okay, so we're just going to essentially just pull this loosely where we think it's going to go, like so. And this one I'm going to push it back slightly as well. Alright, so we've got that kind of first little area of the character, which is, you know, still just a box, but we've just edited a few verts. So the next thing is we're going to be extruding down. So we're going to select the poly in the perspective view, which is facing down, and then we're going to be going on to extrude. So what I usually do is I click on the button next to extrude to bring up the options, and obviously that's too high, so I'm going to go into my front view. And again, when changing viewports, always click with the middle mouse button. If you hit the left mouse button, then you're going to deselect whatever selection you've got. So in this case it was the polygon. Alright, so we're going to now reduce that amount, and I'm going to take it roughly to around about here. So I'm placing an edge sort of within the 6-pack area, just here. And we're then going to hit plus because we want to apply a secondary extrusion as well, and then hit the tick. Now what you're going to find is that there will no doubt will be angles, or the middle edge is going to start to angle, and what you always want to do is try to ensure that the edge is straight. So I'm just going to pull this back just slightly. Now it's not the biggest sort of problem if it's not, but you know, you don't want to have a vertex like that. You want to make it so it's fairly straight, and I'll explain why later. So now that this is all the edges are placed just here, there's actually no flow to them. As you can see on the actual anatomy of the character, the edges sort of start straightening out here, and then they angle down as they go towards the kind of crotch area. So I'm not going to kind of follow them 100%, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow the angles to kind of start flowing in that general direction. So that's kind of coming down a little further. So if you have a look at this, you can see there's a bit of a transition between the angle, how it starts to straighten and then angle down. Now in this view again, we're just going to double click on those two vertex points. Don't forget they both are the ones at the front. So you got one here, just here, and this one here as well. Okay, so we're going to pull those forward, and then we're going to click and drag on this entire area, and we're just going to pull that forward. So we're not worrying too much about exact placements or anything just yet. We're just kind of loosely placing things where we think they're going to go, and then we're going to go back and start tweaking things. Now, a key part of this entire process is sort of matching up the points from the front view to the left view, and this is where life's going to become a little bit easier, and hopefully you kind of start getting it in terms of sort of how it should be placed, and the flow of, you know, this left view and the edges in this left view. So we're going to start with this top point. In fact, before I do that, what I think might be a good idea is just to delete the the polys in the middle. Now we'll have to keep doing this at different stages of the modeling process, but for now I'm just going to get rid of them, and that kind of cleans up this view here, because before you kind of get an overlap of edges from the back and the front, and that's where things start to get a little bit confusing. So we're just going to get rid of those polys by selecting them and pressing delete in the middle. So they're the ones that kind of sit in the middle of the character. That doesn't matter because we're going to merge that anyway, so you won't even be able to see the gap. And we're going to go onto vertex, and we're going to select the first vert just here in this sort of armpit area where the pec kind of meets the arm. Now if we look on the left view here, the point is right the way out here, which doesn't kind of make sense, right? Because if this point is where the armpit is, surely this point should kind of go here. Okay, so that's what we're doing. We're matching up where this point should be and placing it in the left view, where the kind of point would match up on the character. Okay, so we're kind of loosely just placing it where we think it will go, so maybe around about there. We're going to go with the next one as well, and maybe just pull this in slightly, and also bring it lower a little bit as well, just so it kind of hits this point here. I'm going to click on it, and again I'm not clicking and dragging because I don't want to select the back point as well. I'm just going to click on it once, and that means I've only got the front point selected. If that's confusing for you, just go in the perspective view and select that point just there. Now I'm going to go and pull that back. Again, I'm looking where it should be, just underneath the rib cage area. So I'm going to drag that around about here. Now the flow that we want in this viewport here is we want the edges to kind of start from, if you look at the neck and how the edges kind of flow down to the shoulder, on his torso and on the side, they should kind of flow in this S kind of shape. So they're going to come down and then start to straighten, and they'll start to come down towards the leg. So we're just going to keep pulling these vertices in. Again, if you don't quite get it, just kind of follow my lead, and hopefully it starts to make sense. And now I'm going to go with the next one, and I'm just going to simply pull this back to kind of straighten up like that. I'm going to repeat the same process on the back, because I'm going to start from the bottom this time. I'm going to pull that forward a little bit, just around about here. You see where this muscle kind of definition is just there. So we're going to stop around about there. We're going to go on the next one up, and then we're going to click and drag that across there. The next one up, and all I'm going to do is sort of make it so there's a bit of a smooth transition here. If I did something like this, it wouldn't look right, it wouldn't be right, because there's too much of an angle there. So we're going to nicely kind of round this off, so you can see how it kind of curves very, very smoothly from the top point to, or the top edge to the bottom edge. So as you can see, we've kind of roughly got this kind of shape. Now it does look weird, I'm not going to lie, because the front point, which is here, is the front point here. So at the front of his chest, it's going to be a point, which isn't obviously the way our character is going to look, but for now that's going to do, because we haven't yet placed the edges to then go and customize that. Okay, so don't worry, you've got to bear with me here, okay? I promise you. I will lead you to creating a good character. You just have to get through this low poly phase. Do not be tempted to start chucking in loads of edges at this stage, because you're just going to make everything really difficult, and it's going to be a nightmare. So you want to make sure that you do follow my lead and you do stick to fairly sort of low poly modeling techniques, because if you don't, you're going to end up with something that is just not workable at this stage, especially if you're starting out on character modeling. You want to be using low poly. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to simply add a symmetry modifier on this box at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect vertex. I want to make sure nothing's selected under edit poly. Go in the modifier list and go down to symmetry, which is all the way down the very last option within the X group, the S group, and then I'm going to hit the plus next to symmetry in the stack, and then click on mirror. So by default yours might be doing something similar to mine. It's on the correct axes because it's essentially sort of moving in the correct way. If it was on the Y, it would be the wrong way, because that would be again doing it from sort of front to back, and the Z would do it from, oh, for some reason it's back to front. So the Z would be doing it from backwards and forwards, and the Y would be doing it from top to bottom. Now that's probably just to do with the local axes of the box. So what we're essentially doing is we want to go through the different axes until you know you've got the one which is from moving side to side. If I try to move it any other way, it's not going to do anything, because the mirror is facing from this way to this way. Alright. So going back to the beginning, if you have an overlap like this, you can just hit flip, and that's going to essentially allow you to move that mirror on the opposite side. And now where I overlap it, you can see how it kind of just snaps together. Okay, so that's what you want. You want a kind of shape which is roughly like this. Now, like I said, it's a very pointed sort of front of his chest. Useful in battle, but at this stage, not really looking like what it should. But again, we're going to be ignoring that. Now, once you've got the symmetry placed correctly, we're just going to collapse the symmetry modifier by clicking on the minus just there, and then we're going to go into edit poly. Now when you hit edit poly, your symmetry disappears, but there is a way to remedy that. We're going to hit on this icon, which is to show end result on off toggle. So if you click on that, what it does is it takes into account everything that's in the stack, and it shows if all the effects were combined, then what your model would look like. Okay, so that's what we're doing. We're actually combining the symmetry with the edit poly, and it's giving us a preview of what it will look like. So now if you go onto vertex, so it looks a little different because you kind of got a cage which represents where the overlap is. So the vertex point is actually there, but the seam is placed just inside of it, and that's where the objects, where the right symmetry area of the model and the left original area of the model overlap. Okay, So at this stage, what I would actually recommend doing is you save a copy of the file. So don't forget to actually save it. But if you go onto File, Save As, and then Save Copy As, what I usually do is create a new folder called Backups. And then I just put a prefix of 01, and then I continue that. So the next backup will be called 02, 03, 04, and so on. Okay guys, so what we're going to do now is we're going to be applying a smoothing group, because at the moment, like I said, it doesn't really look like anything. So we're just going to select the polys of the area of the model that would be the skin. Okay, so we're going to ignore the top area, we're going to ignore the bottom area, because that's where we're going to still extrude from. So we're just going to select the polys on the outside area that represents sort of the skin of the character. Okay, so hopefully you get that. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to scroll down on my side panel just here until I see polygon smoothing groups. Now within this, I'm going to go on to clear all, so it clears every single smoothing group within the selected polys, and then I'm going to be pressing number 32, and what that does is it places all of those polys on smoothing group 32. The reason why I work backwards from number 32 is because number 1 might already be set to another part of the model, so I don't want to be having an overlap there, so always start from the opposite number, which is 32. Now if I press F4 now and just come into the create tab, you can kind of just really you know, a vague impression of what the character is starting to look like in terms of the torso, and that's kind of okay at this stage. Okay guys, that brings this episode to an end. It's kind of dragged on a little bit because I've been obviously showing you how to set up the reference box as well, but we're going to be moving on to the pec area and the arm as well, up to the wrist in the next tutorial. So please do make sure you stay tuned for that particular episode, and thank you all for watching. And if you do like what I'm doing guys, please do hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. If not, it's perfectly fine, but I just hope that you enjoy the video that I have created for you, and I'll catch you all next time.